Now let's go to simulation process. And let's choose the top network, hide this ground source for a moment. Let's call this fire sim and our fire solvers pass. And this smoke object is pass. Connect this, and the volume source. Okay, so for the volume source, we take our fuel from ground source, fuel out. And let's add the source fuel. We have not a fuel, we have a burn source volume, and we send this burn into the flame. And we have a temperature and don't have a velocity. And let's choose the maximum for the flame and pull to the temperature, maybe at like a 50, maybe like bigger, a little bit scale for the flame. Yeah, it should be like this. So with the smoke object sparse, I will use a 0.05 like we said for the source, and I want to copy parameter this to the ground source. So let's paste it here, relative reference, and here, paste relative reference. Now back to sim, and I guess I can try to create simulation to see does it work or not. So let's go to multi-field, as we always choose here. Go to emission, should be the flame here, and some temperature, density, and density. So now you can see that we have some fire here. Not too much, but I have some simulation. So before I go to my first test and select the simulation into the cache folder, I want to change my Pyro solver a little bit. And the first thing I want to choose here is the timescale, because by default it's 1, and for the large scale simulation I prefer to use a little bit smaller value to like 0.75. And to the advection reflection, make it 1. Let's go to the first frame with a single project. And we can play with the cooling range before we make a first test. I want to see how big is the flame for my fire. Increase the temperature reference to like 3000, and maybe a little bit buoyancy scale again, because it's a huge file, large scale file. I get this, as the buoyancy should be like that, 0.5. With the flames, by default, I set 1, just to decrease the flame height. And in this case, I didn't want to create smoke. I just want to create the first fire, to have an ability to look on this fire, how big it is. And, well, actually, let's create a smoke, but with the default emission mount 1. So with this setup, I go to shape and change something here. So I need to have a dissipation, but a pretty small amount, like 0.005 or even 0.001, to avoid huge dissipation, because I want to have a very dense smoke going into like this side maybe, and add a disturbance. And for this disturbance settings, I go to add a flame. So I want to add 2 disturbance nodes. So the first one is working with the flame. I will leave the same settings here, but I want to add a disturbance node, and for the smoke, for the density field, and to do this, I will add another microsolver, and let's choose 3 maximum sum steps. So the first thing I want to choose here, to add here, is the gas wind, because we definitely should have some wind. And if I look from my camera, this wind should go into the x-axis and negative x. So set -1. This my direction for the wind, and maybe a smaller 0.5 for the wind here. And my disturbance, gas disturbance node for this smoke. So I want to merge those guys, and connect them into the forces. With the gas disturbance node, what I want to change here is the strength. I guess is pretty big, so let's say send it to 5. and the threshold range maybe like 2.1 to 0 to increase the range, the influence range with the block size. I will keep the size, but maybe just a bit increase the roughness and make some octaves to 4. So yeah, I think that just fine for my first simulation, and go to geometry to save this scene, and we will see what we need to change. I'm going to fire, import, go inside Adobe import field, the Adobe import fields, grab our sim and the smoke object from this. And let's choose the pyro. So we need to have a density, velocity, don't need a rest, the temperature, flame, and nothing more. Remove those guys. And volume resample just to decrease the velocity. So I go to vel, all my velocities, and decrease it to resolution 0.5. And the file cache. Now let's set this to let's call it, I know, just simplifier. Oh, why are you not typing? File 1. Let's call it version 1. And let's just remove this guy and keep those guys over here and go to a null object. Go here, fire out. So I'm gonna save this file and let's try to calculate those 90. I get that I should have like 200 frames because, you know, the first like 100, 150, we're gonna create just the trail, the smoke trails. So I don't want to spend too many time for this, so I already have pre-cached 200 frames. So in this case, I want to make the first simulation to see what I need to change here. So I press load from disk and make this scene on the background. So I'm gonna save this file and save to disk on the background. Now I stop simulation. I decrease the voxel size to 0.1 because there was very long calculation time. So now I had 122 frames. So we can see it 120. So we have some smoke, definitely, but to have a little bit more representative view, we need to add the pyro post process. And connected here. By default, it will create some fire and smoke. Definitely to have some light here. So skylight. Go to skylight and disable light in viewport. I don't want to see that bright gradient. Well, it's not bad, and I'm not bad in my case. So maybe play a little bit with the smoke. I want to add a little bit more density. So maybe I will change the smoke amount in a solver. We have some lines here because of the small resolution. I guess that it will correct it. Let's add intensity scale to my file. Actually, I want to look on my fire, decrease the density scale to 0, and now I can see that I have very huge fire. Well, yeah, if you look on some reference video, we have a very big fire from the large fire squares, but in my case is pretty high, so definitely you need to change some the flame height or the lifespan and increase the smoke, I guess. All right, so what I want to do, let's go back to frame 1 and let's change something here again. So go to Pyro Solver. So with the time scale, I guess it's work pretty fine. Frame 120, I almost have the proper smoke. So if I look from my camera, let's check this and double check. And oh, sorry, I don't want to simulate. So yeah, it's pretty fine. And about like maybe frame 200, I'm gonna have the smoke rising to the side of my camera view. to the upper side. So back to frame 1, and what I want to change, let's play a bit with the flames, so maybe like 0.5 here, and with the smoke I want to increase the smoke emission to 2. So 0.2, 0.5, that should be a fine. With the shape, cool, advanced, nothing more, and yeah, maybe I will do another disturbance. So I make a copy of my fast, so maybe it's like a mid disturbance, and this should be a low disturbance. So decrease the strength to like 3, decrease the block size to 1, make roughness and maximum octaves by default, and maybe even threshold range like 0.075. Love that. And this for my smoke. Yeah, the threshold field is the density, and this tube field is velocity. So cool, that's what I want. Okay, so the gas wind, disturbance, nothing changed here, I guess. It's all fine with the pyro solver. Again, U, and U, yeah, should be fine. So now I will decrease the voxel even a little bit smaller, so like 0.04 to get a better result. So again, go here, and you can see that 0.4, so I will resave it. It takes some time because we need to have a bigger res, so 2 million, 3.7, not bad in my case. And let's cache it again. And we're back to our simulation. It took like 1 night, a little bit less than a night. And what we can see here, I add the render in the background here. So we have pretty nice details on the smoke areas. And let's go to the pyro solver, pyro post process. I decreased the density scale to 0.5 because I already had nice amount of smoke. So what I want to do, I want to make this smoke a little bit, come on, a little bit darker. So can we disable that? 0.25, 0.05 should be fine. I'll leave this intensity scale to 10, and all those guys I will leave by default. Anyway, I can play with shader if I want to. And I will play with shader. But there's one thing I mentioned, that we have a pretty low res fire. So it's not bad with the smoke because of 2 disturbance. And we have a nice shape, have a nice detail with this voxel size. If you look on the density, we have almost 300 million voxels, so not bad. It's a little bit more darker than I expected. Anyway, you can play this in a shader. So, but what I really want to do, I want to increase the fire quality, okay, because we have a pretty small fire res, and yeah, we can say, okay, let's go to our pyro solver and let's change something inside of my fire settings, maybe add some shredding. But what I want to add here, in fact, there is some trick which I can apply on some my scene. Not 100% useful because we can't apply this on all scenes, but in scenes like this, what I can do, I can simulate just fire. The low res fire in this case, because of the resolution, and we can't create a very huge container, okay, and create very small voxel because we need to have a lot of RAM. But for the smoke is fine, but if I want to have more detailed fire, I can create another container like here near the fire surface, add a smaller voxel here, but I don't want to create a smoke. So just fire with the same source, And almost the same settings, I just want to increase the fire quality.